Well, anyway, I would like to say to Sabre Jones, to thank her for bringing me up here and allowing me to get a chance to glimpse this very vital place. I am extremely excited by the work by the fact that I didn't know this place existed. And now I do, and I'm going to make every effort to make sure everyone else does. I wanted just to say, before I start with these guys, it was, to my horror, I realized it's 48 years ago this month that I started to rehearse Rosencrantz at Guildenstern in New York. 48 years ago. It's unbelievable. Before I started, I came over from England, and I went over to stay with some friends in Dorset, Vermont. And that was the last time I was in Vermont. And now I'm back. You know, when I really want to commend with all my heart my dear friend Myriam and the work that this ensemble did on this amazing play. I'd forgotten quite how amazing it is. I mean, it's like when you haven't seen it for a while, and did it for a year and a half, and I was never bored, but I was tired. Never bored though, but seeing it again and remembering the juice of the words and the joy, and these two gentlemen play it with such exquisite timing. And I have to say, Brian, the ensemble of the players thrilled me, all of you. It was like watching it as one always wanted it to be. You've really done a great job, Myriam.
Yes.
And now I want to just ask these two gentlemen whether they've got any questions.
I have a question. I want you to tell us how you came to do Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And what you were in the West End, I think, at the time?
Yeah, I was doing a play in the West End. I was doing a dreary thriller called Wait Until Dark, which had been running for nearly a year, and I was about to cut my throat with boredom. But I was making money for the first time, and I was in my bath one day thinking about cutting my throat. And there was this phone call. And my char lady said, Mr. Oliver wants you on the phone, and I clambered crossly out of the bath, and it was Larry Olivier's secretary who said, get down to that was my agent. He said, Larry wants to see you down at the Vic right now. So the play had opened about a month or 6 weeks before. And because I was in this other play, I'd never seen it. I'd never had a chance to even read it. I knew that it was something special. Everyone was talking about it, but I hadn't seen it. And I didn't even know it was going to New York. And I'd already been to New York, and I was desperate to come back for various reasons. And when I went down to the theatre, I kind of was met by talking to Brian about Derek Golby, who was the director at that time, who was a sort of accidental director because he was the assistant of the man who'd been scheduled to do that slot, and had left, and so there'd been a space, and Derek was doing it, and it was not a happy experience for the company, and they went and begged Tom to come and help them. Apparently he did. And then when I auditioned, Derek said, do this ludicrous speech on, and it was like he really didn't want me, and I knew he didn't want me. So I read it cold, stone cold, which means I've never seen or read the play before. I've read it as I was reading it, word by word. And it's probably the best I've ever done. You know, because once you know where the laughs are, once you're not thinking it as I was that day, singing for myself like anything. Once you start to know what the tricks are in a speech, in a comedy speech, it's a slippery slope. So I was able to really experience the speech as I think it's written, which is thinking, and I thought that Jamie did a marvelous job of the realization of all the, well, no, but that sort of growth of thinking, that the speech is full of growth of negative thinking, of nihilistic thinking.
Which speech was it?
The box speech.
The
The
box.
box speech, I'm talking about the box speech, which I think is a great piece of classical comedy writing.
And so you read it, and then from the dark.
Oh yeah, well yes, I was reading it and I finished it, and I managed to stop laughing. I mean, I managed to keep myself from laughing because it was so funny. And I thought, this is amazing. And then I finished, and Larry Olivier's voice said, "I told you," and I got the part. So it was my little job.
And then what did you feel when you said that you rode the train home?
Oh, then I went back.
you
Then I
read?
went back in the tube. They gave me the script, and I hadn't read the play, and I started to read the play, and I started to cry right there and then in the subway, because I was so amazed and at the beauty of the comedy, and the thought that I might actually be doing it. You know, I didn't know for sure until I got home, and the phone was ringing as I went down to the phone, and they said, "You're going to be in New York on August 15th, which was 48 years ago this month. Coming on. This is unbelievable, isn't it? Anyway, go on, question.
But what was sort of the process when you jumped in, you saw this play that you really liked? How was it like, working with the director and then Tom and then both in a
Who
way?
was the director? Who was
The director was Derek Golby, and Brian knows him, I know him, and he'd been taken off the production by the American producer, David Merrick. And that confused everybody considerably, because the American actors were not used to that kind of. And so what happened was Tom Stoppard directed John Wood and I and the player, people who had words. Claude Chagrin, who did the mime and the creation of the choreography, did the players, and Derek did the court. And it was an amazing experience. But I think that what I was seeing this afternoon was a cohesion. That everything was happening together. The humor that Myriam brought to the tragedians was reflected in the humor that the boys brought, and it was very exciting to watch the whole. I don't think it's a good idea to split it in three. I think that was a necessity, and I'm very grateful because it worked. But when Derek Golby was nominated for a Tony Award, there was a good deal of ill-conceived hissing about that. There were a lot of people in the show, because we had an extraordinary player, a wonderful, beautiful actor called Robert Edison, an English actor. He was the only other one to come over with us, and he was summarily fired in Washington because he wasn't bringing enough pizzazz was the word, which
Wow.
John and I didn't really understand, to the play, and somebody else went in, and we were heartbroken because it was taken, because those three people, the two players, I mean the two boys and the player, have an extraordinary kind of triumphal, what's the word, triumvirate in the play. So we were very sad to say goodbye to Bobby, because he's absolutely wonderful. But yeah, so we went on, we opened it, and it was a big hit. And the reason that this is interesting, because nobody expected the play to be a hit. Certainly David Merrick did not. He booked the theatre for 3 months under his art foundation, and we were just told we were going to be there for 3 months. That was our contract. And what happened was, it was November of 1967. It opened, and it was a couple of months before the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And what Merrick did, an extraordinarily clever thing, on the opening night, he packed the balcony of the theatre with students from Columbia. And we didn't realize it. I don't think anybody realized that the country was about to boil over with anger, student rage and all that stuff. And this play hit them exactly where they lived, and they identified with these two guys who were sort of shoved into the middle of nowhere to die without knowing why, So it was an extraordinary. The play had an extraordinary effect on young people, and we were surrounded, mobbed at the stage door by students who had this sense of, we know who you are. And I don't think anyone was expecting that. Certainly we were.
Did you say there were demonstrations outside the theater?
There were. Did I say that?
It was at the height of Vietnam.
It was at the height of. There were a lot of demonstrations everywhere.
Yeah.
There were just people waiting outside the stage door with tears in their eyes, saying, "Yeah, man, this is us," It was, and that had not happened in England, because England didn't have Vietnam. So nobody was expecting it. Certainly Tom Stoppard wasn't. It was like a source of, and it turned it from a sort of modest artistic success to a mega hit, which.
And you were saying that Ava Gardner had to sit on a barrel.
Yeah.
to see...
What?
We were such a hit. God, for 48 years. Ava Gardner, who was a great beauty, I don't know her. A lot of people met her, but you guys probably don't. She was a friend of Frank Sinatra's, and Frank Sinatra had the theatre, the cafe next door to where we were at the Alvin, and she couldn't get a seat. And Sinatra came in with these two guys and said, "You give Miss Gardner a seat." And so the stage manager didn't know what to do, so he put her on a barrel, one of the barrels, in the wings for the first two acts, and then put her on something else for the third act. And she was stunned by it. Everyone was stunned by it. It was, and I'm sure you guys would know that you're playing it, you don't realize the effect that the accumulation of the words has on an audience. I mean, the words are so brilliant and profound and unendingly unpredictable and surprising. You think, I kept thinking about, why didn't I do that? I could have done that. I overplayed that. Because I was learning from you, gentlemen, so very, very proud.
It's gonna do me very
This
good
is
for
total
a very long
gossip.
time.
He also said that Marlena Dietrich saw it 3 times.
Oh yeah, she used to, oh, this is about me, I don't want to talk about this.
Do you have any questions?
Or anyone?
Yes?
Yes,
I was wondering, when you're reversing those one word back and forth, back and forth, do you learn each other's parts? I mean, it's sort of like music. It goes, how can you do it without?
Well, some people are better at other people's parts than others.
He's got far more than I do ultimately, and I tried to learn it all before I came up, which I normally maybe wouldn't do with other kinds of pieces, but because ideally I want to like that you learn it once it gets tied to some kind of activity, and so learning it as you go helps. But with this, because it's so intricate, I wanted to.
It has to be said that James can quote anywhere from Hamlet.
That's
anything. And so I dubbed him my dramaturg.
Well, but the challenge of it, it's not done any favors that like just about everything that the reason that I didn't have such a hard time is because everything that I say is in response to something that you say. And almost nothing that you say is in response to something that I say. You always like start a new thesis like every couple of lines, and rather than answer the question that I pose.
That's where I'm bad.
So it's tougher for that.
But when it comes
but it is like
specifically,
music, isn't it?
When it comes specifically to that's the question game. We run it multiple times, every single day.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who did this role in college a few years ago, and when I got cast, I'm like, hey, you got any tips? And he's just like, run the question game.
Yeah.
Run it every day, anytime you can. And you guys did too.
we did all the time.
Yeah, you have to.
And so Tom was very insistent that we got it precise, I mean, he wasn't taking even the slightest kind of, he wanted the timing to be exactly as he'd written it. I don't remember exactly what order.
Sure.
What kind of responses would you get from? I did a Hamlet in New York a couple of years ago, and we take for granted, as well we should, the populace in general is very familiar with that play. And I had one friend that came to see it, and maybe it'll happen for this production here too, who didn't know the play. And didn't know Hamlet, extraordinary. And she would go to people at the interval being like, what do you think is going to happen next? Like, completely sincerely. And we thought, well, how extraordinary, because of how rare to have an audience like that for Shakespeare.
That's lovely.
So what kind of, how would people, did you get people who would come who didn't know Hamlet and then maybe entered into this play from a different?
I don't think so. Not that I remember. It was we had most New Yorkers knew Hamlet, and even if they didn't, they pretended they did. And I think that the play R&G is entertaining on its own.
It is, yeah.
So it really kind of gives you a little extra tweak to know Hamlet, but it doesn't really make the evening or great.
It's like there are so many different entry points into it. There's so much in it. There's so many different things.
Well, it's when you say things like glean, you use the word glean, or when he's
draw him into pleasures.
Mm-hmm. Yes, got to draw him into pleasures. Mm-hmm. You're quoting from what you've been told by the king, and so you have to do that. But I think you're doing it so well yourselves that it really doesn't matter if you don't know the play. I mean,
I think that's one of the ways that he wrote it. Like, it wasn't like, most of Hamlet's scenes and then like a couple of their scenes. It's them and then a couple of Hamlets. I think he wrote it for not knowing Hamlet, just as sort of like that.
He wrote it as a young man with an enormous intellect. He wrote that it could be put on a stage next door to a production of Hamlet. And the two plays could happen simultaneously, and one actor would lead one stage and walk into another set in the other play, and that's so that he wrote they dovetail completely. That was his conceit, being Tom Stoppard, because beyond conceits. But
There was another question over here.
yeah, so.
Yeah, I had the very good fortune to see you in the original Broadway production. I was a medical student at Columbia at the time.
You were.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
And the impact was stunning given the Vietnam War and given that only 10 years earlier than that in public school we used to have daily drills in case of nuclear attack on New York City. I was wondering what you felt now, almost half a century later, the impact is like given where the world has come in half a century of this
No,
play.
it's great for you. You're playing it.
It's funny because we didn't, as we were putting this together and wrapping our heads around what we're going to do with different things, I don't think we ever possibly thought that we could connect this to like an actual war or
then-
specifically
and then
Vietnam.
once we were told, it makes
It
complete
just makes
sense.
total
It makes
sense then.
such sense. And I feel like I've recently even seen plays in New York addressing the wars we've just been in, or are still in, I don't
Still
even
in
know,
that.
really. They do have the same, they do have a quality of what's somewhere in this, of people in literal a space even that they don't even know how to define.
Oh, sure.
And yet can't get out of.
They've got
and
orders,
yeah.
and they don't know what those orders mean.
Yeah.
And then finally in the end they find out that they're going to be killed, and they still can't do anything about it because they still don't know what that means. I mean, the whole build-up of that is trying to work out what the actual meaning of death is. And they,
And the purpose for life.
well, it's the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't, and Myriam, they don't know whether, and this is analogous to, I think, most of the conflict that we have in the world, that we don't know whether whether we're doing it to our surroundings or our surroundings are doing it to us. We don't know whether we're the bad guy
Yeah.
or if they're the bad guy.
And there's so many situations now, whether it be war, conflicts with other countries, whether it be trying to pay your rent, whether it be trying to like deal with new technologies that may or may not have control over your bank account. Like there's so many things in different parts of our lives that we think we might have control over, and with a click of a button we get that feeling that we do, but there's this other construct that's above us that we know or can actually press buttons. And I think there's so many things now, and I'm sure then, that, you know, we are riding along this thing and we're going this way because we're told to, and that's what society is telling us to.
We had no buttons then.
We had no buttons. That's
No
true.
buttons.
We had no little books that you could.
That's right.
It was all reality. But yeah, I mean, it's still a fact.
And even if we were in peacetime or what, I think no matter what's going on in the larger world, I think that there's something very quietly, just the conflict of the sort of central conflict between he and I I think the way to live this life is to exert myself unto it and see what kind of effect I can have on it. And I think that the way to live my life is to accept that it is working in some way that I don't understand, and I have to concede to that and let it take me for the ride. And the challenge of which of those things to
and
lead
it's so
into
interesting because
happens all the time.
this is Guildenstern's conceit, is that we're marked now, and his conceit, well, what do we do now? You know, how do we resolve it? And yet, as characters, Rosencrantz is the happy one, and the one saying, it's going to be okay. And yet, let's do something about it. And he's the one saying, well, what can we do about it?
And it, as the play goes, like how
and then
does
it
respond,
reverses.
kind of starts to mesh
Which is so
together.
fantastic, because that's how we are in life. You know, sometimes we're in wanting to be in control, and other times we say, hey, we have to be along for the ride. And it's that kind of state that as human beings we constantly go from one to the other. And I think, I mean, for me, having not, you know, been privy to the Vietnam War, because I wasn't really around for it, for me, the play means so much. What I think we all strive to do, which is to find purpose and meaning in our own lives. And so rarely do we actually get a kind of a memo from someone, and this is why you're here. So we glean, why we're here once in a while, and we grasp at those meanings as much as we can to kind of create purpose. And I also think that artists and art brings purpose to life and gives meaning to our lives. And I think the players are, represent the artists, and that they're the conduit to meaning because they've been at the court. So I think that the play works on so many different levels, even today, that makes it just as relevant and just as important.
Yes.
Well, you just made me realize something I was struggling with throughout the entire play, which is the fluidity of the identities.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so what you just said made me realize that it is really a dialogue in one person's mind.
But also they are every man, because we're all like that.
Exactly.
We're at once we can be Rosencrantz, at once we can be Guildenstern.
Humanity is interchangeable, is what you're saying. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? Sadly so.
Or if some people could realize it could be a help.
Right. But the confusion of identities. I mean, why don't I ask Brian something? But because I don't know whether in Hamlet, she says thanks, Rosencrantz and Gentle Guildenstern. No, thanks, Guildenstern and Gentle Rosencrantz. There's a definite confusion intended by Shakespeare, which is what Tom started the whole play with. People don't know which is which, and it was very important to him that it stayed that way. And when we were playing it in New York, it was kind of difficult to be confused all the time with the other guy, because I didn't mind it because I was nobody, but he did.
That's funny. And we wanted to distinctly confuse you, and I think this was Eve's doing.
They want you to be confused. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because so she cast us so that Jamie and I look exactly the same. So we wanted to make sure that was really tough.
We have discovered that we are twins in a great
Yeah,
way.
there's a lot. We have got a lot of
A lot of things we haven't done.
One that shows.
The context of the play, which is really interesting, is the time, the early 60s. And it's also the time, particularly in Britain, of the rise of the anti-hero. If you look at the films of Lindsay Anderson, it was the anti-hero. They were still looking at the other guy, not the main guy, the other guy. And I think it's right that Gentle Rosencrantz, thank you, Gentle Rosencrantz, that actually what it's about the structure again. The fact that the little guy is always the guy, and there's also those wonderful, if you remember at the time, Anthony Muni musicals, which were about
Stop the world.
little guy who was
Yes.
being marginalised. So that it was very strong in the zeitgeist of thinking, dramatic thinking, was to look at something from another point of view. And of course, Stoppard had the genius, and it was genius, to do it from the point of view of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who have always been regarded as who are these guys?
Always confused.
Always confused. If somebody says, what are you playing? Rosencrantz, you go,
And it's typical of Tom's sense of humour and wickedness.
That's right.
You start the whole play based on that misunderstanding.
And of course it elaborates out of that because it gets into the structure of the world, and these guys are victims. There is much.
Well, that's what it turns out, of course. That they are thrown into an abyss of nothingness, which they don't know why they're there or what they're there for. And they die, which is what happened in Vietnam. It's what people thought happened in Vietnam.
Any more questions? Yes?
What should be, or what would you say is the better sequence? You see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern first, and then Hamlet? vice versa.
I always thought seeing Hamlet first, to be honest. That's sort of like, you know, the Bible that we take from and like
I
the
think
world.
he's right. I think
Yeah.
if you have Hamlet first, you know a lot of what's happening in Rosencrantz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's more, you'll get more out of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Yeah.
So we
Quest
should
to see
swap.
Hamlet
Do
first.
Hamlet in the afternoon and
That would be great. In the evening, wouldn't be able to see us on the boat. That'd be great.
But yeah.
I mean, had anyone here not ever seen Hamlet? Or you had all seen Hamlet? So you knew what was going on.
Who here has never heard of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead until Gar's season? Oh, those
Good.
love it. I like it. I like it.
At least nobody will admit it.
Yeah, no one's gonna admit it. They'll be like, no, okay.
Okay, I admit it.
Hey!
There's not a lot of theater around here and I live here, so
Well, that's
Did you
changing fast.
enjoy it?
I'm going to see it after I see Hamlet and have not had a chance yet to see
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
I've been
Okay, great.
well
Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay,
Perfect.
extraordinary.
Well, there's your order right there.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Nice.
And when do you do it again, you guys?
So it's next Sunday. Sundays at 2, and we'll do that through the 16th. So we have 3 more
And
performances.
Hamlet's on Saturday, so.
Hamlet's
three
on
more-
Saturday and
3 more
Sunday
weeks.
And
evenings.
you're doing it on Wednesday?
No.
No, that's the gala, right? The Wednesday that was mentioned.
Yes, Wednesday night's the gala.
One.
For the nursing home.
For the nursing home.
All proceeds go to the nursing
You're doing
home.
Rosencrantz that night, no?
No.
No.
Oh,
No.
you're not? Oh, I thought you were.
Could you do it that night? Could you do it on a Wednesday night? Sabra,
Yeah,
could you put in a couple of performances?
I think if we sell well, why not put in some performances?
Tell your friends.
Tell
Tell
everyone.
your friends,
Right.
please. Tell
If we
everybody.
sell these out, we'd be happy to put in some more performances, some night ones.
Yeah.
Really great.
It'd be lovely. It'd be
Really
fantastic.
great.
It'd be wonderful. We'd love that.
That's why we did it, you know.
Nice.
But I think Stoppard is new to a lot of people
Sure,
in
of
this
course.
area. Would you say, Alice? Yeah. Stoppard's new to a lot of people in this area. It's a brilliant area. I mean, everybody's brilliant.
And he's a boy. I hope that.
It's a brilliant area.
I hope
But-
that when you come to see Rosencrantz, if you didn't already today, and if you did today and you enjoyed it, that you'll seek out some of his other plays as well to read or to see where you can.
Because
This is
I'd like
quite
to
brilliant.
understand that the people here are brilliant, but
Yeah,
they're
wonderful.
very hardworking, and it's a hard place to live. And so as a result, many people don't know about Tom Stoppard
Sure.
because they're more concerned about how to chop enough wood to keep warm.
Sure. Well,
Well,
thank you.
yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing him over.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
that's
saying
what
we
I
can.
wanted.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
and
Tom
we had some
Stoppard,
other
he's
people
right.
who thought it was
Oh,
a good
yeah.
idea too.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed it, I hope you'll seek out more of it if you want to, because it's
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll is a great
that
play.
Brian
That's
did in
right.
New York.
I wanted to write Stoppard and tell him about it but I just didn't have time to do it. But maybe we can make him aware of it.
I think Nicole. I think
Nicole actually.
reached
Nicole
out.
sent
He
me.
sends
Nicole
his
who plays
best.
Gertrude. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna write to
Yeah.
him as well.
Are there any more questions for Brian?
Or anyone up
Yeah.
there?
Brian?
This isn't a question, but I just want to say I thought the play was terrific.
Thank you
It had
very
a great
much.
impact.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I agree.